Okay, ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to try to demonstrate how to use linear regression on your calculator for number 5. Okay, so number 5 we kind of did in class, all right? And so we'll see. I think there's a typo there. Hold on a second. Pretty sure this should be 6. That should be a 22. Okay, so anyway, we'll get to that part in just a second. So here's what we started at, right? So we have, now what it's asking us to do, right, is we're to find the nth term of the following sequence algebraically. So what it's asking for the equation, right? As you can see in letter A there, our equation we end up finding is an is equal to 7 plus 3n minus 1, okay? Notice they just moved that d value to the front, which looks a little more natural. Anyway, right, that's normally how we distribute. So how we found that first value, right, you can either count back, which is what we did, right? So if a to the 5th is 19, if I wanted to find a to the 1st, I would take my d value and I would subtract 3 4 times, right, in order to get back to that first term, right? So as you can see below, there's a couple ways we could find that first term. You could either take 3, multiply it by 4, right, and so you get 12, and then 19 minus 12 is 7, right? Or if you look right below it, as you can see, they started at 19, and we counted back 3 each time. And so once we got back to our first term, we found that first term is 7, okay? And then also I showed you a different way in class. So there's a couple ways you could find that first term, all right? So it's up to you to decide how you want to find that, all right? It's up to you to sort of pinpoint how you want to do that. Now, the next part is finding the nth term of the following sequence using your calculator. So this is where we left off, okay? So here's what we're going to do. I'm using my left hand here, so I apologize. Right? So here's what you have to do, right? So you turn on your calculator, okay? You're going to second memory, so this plus sign down here, and 7, 1, and 2. Okay? And that will clear your RAM. All right? And so I tend to do this every time because we're going to have to access our lists. Okay? So our first thing, all right, is we're going to go to Stat, and you're going to click Edit. And we're going to edit our list. So here's L1 and L2, and we're only going to use specifically L1 and L2. All right, so don't try to do anything extra on this or create extra lists. All right, just stick with L1 and L2, and you'll never go wrong. All right, so L1, this list right here, this is where we'll put the number term that we're in reference to. Okay, so in this case here, right, the one term that we do have is our 5th term. And our 5th term is 19. Okay? Now, because this is arithmetic, right, means we're adding 3 each time. That's what that d value stands for. Okay? Well, then our next term, our 6th term, okay, will have to be 19 plus 3, which is 22. Okay? Which you see right here. All right? And now, once we have that in, we click Stat, Calc, we get on to Linear Regression, hit Enter twice, and voila. Okay? So as you can see, we switch out that X for that AN, and so when they're talking about find the nth term, they want you to write an equation that starts with some a to the n, right? Because you can utilize this equation now to find any term in the sequence, okay? So the 3 represents your slope, right, what we're adding each time, okay? And this 4 represents, well, what we're going to add to that first term, right? So if you put a 1 in here, right, a to the 1, or a to our first term, right, we'd put so it'd be 3 times 1, which 3 times 1 is 3, plus 4 is 7. So a to the 1st, right, will still give us, where's it at? Our first term up here. Okay? All right, so you plug in a 7 for n, or I'm sorry, a 1 for n, right, when you're talking about the first term, and you'll get 7, right? You plug a 2 in here, You know, if we're trying to find A2, our second term in our series, 3 times 2 is 6, plus 4 is 10. A to the third, 3 times 3 is 9, plus 4, 13, so on and so forth. So this equation can also be used to find whatever term in the sequence. Okay? And the only difference between this guy and this guy is this guy up here, they didn't distribute that 3. Okay? The only difference is when you distribute that 3, right, you get 3n minus 3, and 7 minus 3 gives us 4. Okay, so that's the only difference between what your calculator does and when you do it algebraically, is that you get a more simplified version from your calculator. And as you can see, right, we just replace the y with a sub n, and then your x with n. And this n is your whatever term in the sequence, right? It's that sub, what do you call that? Subletter, right? Okay, a subscript. There we go. I couldn't think of it, right? So it's that subscript right there. Okay, so that subscript determines what term we're talking about, right? So the fifth term, right? 5 would go in for n. 3 times 5 is 15, plus 4 gives you 19. Okay? So anyway, that's where all that stuff's coming from. And as far as linear regression goes, right, you can utilize, now let's say we don't have the fifth term. Let's say we have the first term. All right, so let's just delete this out here. That becomes a 1, and our first term is 7. Okay, so again, what's cool about this is it doesn't matter which two terms you use. Right, you just hit stat, calc, and voila. You end up getting the same thing, okay? Which is pretty cool. So again, what you're looking at though, and what you got to remember, is that this first column represents which term in the sequence, right? So our first term is 7, our sixth term is 22, right? And then once you have that in there, stat, calc, linear regression, and boom. Okay? All right, hopefully this video helps. Good luck, you guys. And I'll try to demonstrate this again tomorrow. Okay?